Michael. Welcome to the last series of Edge for our school year. Now, this is going to be a little different. I'm talking about two things today. I am talking about bread and I'm talking about seniors and seeing if there's something between them that we can learn from. So, normally, if you haven't been around for our school year, normally at the end of the school year, what we do is we take and we have our last word series to honor our seniors and who they are. Unfortunately, we don't get to honor them the way that we want to because we're going to be doing it from home. However, that means we get to use a little bit of creativity and think a little bit outside of the box. And we've got some seniors who have jumped into this with us to help us out with it. By the way, if you're a senior watching this, we still have room to involve more of you on this. So please, please, please let us know if you want to be in, if you're interested in being honored on our website or on our YouTube. So I'm talking about bread, talking about seniors. I don't know how many of you make bread. I never did before, but now that I've been home, it's something that I've been picking up. Some of you have been watching that on my Instagram. I gotta tell you, bread is not as easy as it seems. It definitely is not. But it is fascinating how there's really just 4 main ingredients. Now there's extra stuff that can be thrown in, but really it's just flour, water, salt, and yeast. Something so simple can be so important to our lives. It's fascinating how many things we eat actually involve some form of bread. You got sandwich bread, you got buns, you got all sorts of stuff. You got crazy bread from Little Caesars. I know some of you have been rocking that crazy bread. While I've been making bread, which by the way, not all of my bread rolls have turned out. I've taken some time to actually study up on bread in Scripture. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but in the Bible, bread is very important. It's used a lot, and it carries a lot of significance. This one time that the Israelites were trying to, they had a place where they would go and honor God, whether that was in the tabernacle or whether that was in the temple. Which that was the place where you would go and see God, you would go and meet with God, or people would meet with God on your behalf. And they had a table there that had a light that was shining on it, and they had a loaf of bread that was always freshly baked and placed out. But there's something kind of cool about that, thinking about every day being a sacrifice, a living sacrifice where we give up our desires to chase after what God has for us. There's also stories about the unleavened bread. They had this feast in the Old Testament where they would remind themselves of when they were in slavery, and they would eat it every year to remind themselves of what God had done for them. Then there was the time that there was a widow who was on her last jar of oil and on her last jar of flour. They had a prophet come stop by, and this prophet asked her if she would make bread. She did, even though she knew she wouldn't have any left. From then on, while they were in a famine, that woman, whenever she would open up her jar of flour, there would always be just enough for the next day. Then there was the story about the little boy who was in the crowd where Jesus was teaching. The disciples were trying to figure out how to feed so many people with just so little. And Jesus took that bread and that fish and used that to feed a multitude. When he was at what we call the Last Supper, he gave them bread and he gave them some wine, and he said, when you eat this, when you drink this, remember me. This is something that we still do today. See, bread is a huge part of our lives. So you're probably thinking, what on earth does this have to do with seniors? And that's a good question. And I want to answer that question with another question. Have you ever made bread before? And it's an interesting process, bread making. Because even with different recipes, it still kind of follows the same format. First, you have your measurements, right? And then you have your mixing. Then you have this process. This is my favorite part, though. This is the kneading. And what it does is it forms these bonds to make it stronger. And then there's the proofing period. That's where you let it rest. And in the times of rest, it rises. But then after it's risen, you take it and you punch it back down again. And then you have to let it rise again and put it in its final shape where it fully rises. And then you bake it. And then you've got your loaf of bread. And when I think about the process of making bread, it actually reminds me of high school. I mean, think about it. There are measurements and requirements you need before you can even get into high school. Then once you get there, then you start being poured into by your teachers. You have your parents at home. You have your coaches. You have your people at church. Everyone's pouring into you, and there's this mixing that's going on as you're trying to figure out what life is, trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out how your future is going to look and the kind of person you're going to be. It all gets kneaded together. And you have some successes, right? There's some pressure that's placed on you, and you have some successes, you have some failures, you find out things that you are good at, and you find out things that you're not good at. But with all the while, with every single stretch, every single pull, you're getting stronger and stronger. So then you get some time to rest here and there, and then you rise a little, right? You feel like you're more confident in who you are, and then you hit junior year, and what happens? Junior year is like that punching down process. Like, man, everybody gets to junior year, and they're like, what is happening? After you've been knocked down a little bit in junior year, you get to senior year, you get your final shaping, you get your final rise, face a little heat at the end, and what do you have? You have your accomplishments. Graduating from high school is huge. You have 4 years of hard work finally paying off. Some of us would come out of high school and things are a little misshapen, right? We're a little dense in some areas and maybe a little crumbly in some others, but at the end we leave with this huge accomplishment. And see, for last words, this is exactly what we're doing. We're taking time to honor our seniors. For the next few weeks, we're going to be sharing stories from as many of our seniors as want to of how they've grown and how they've overcome these last couple of years. And they've been shaped over the years. They've been molded over the years. They've been kneaded. There's been things that have happened to them. There's things that they've gone through. And all the while, as they've sought out God in the process, He's used their obedience to grow them, to strengthen them, to use them to impact the world around them already. And we cannot wait to start sharing their stories. So, Instagram, YouTube, the next few weeks, we're going to be watching their stories because they've got advice to give to you. We asked them all, we sat them down and said, what would you say after 4 years of high school? What would you say is the most important thing? What would you tell entering ninth graders? And you're going to be amazed at the things that they say. 2020 seniors, we cannot begin to say how proud we are of you and everything you've done and how you've pursued Christ in the middle of all of your chaos. So come join us this week. Everybody, no matter what grade you're in, come back, check YouTube every couple of days on YouTube and Instagram because we're going to be posting their stories. And seniors, if you want in on this, we want you to join us. We have a handful. We got 5 or 6 right now. We want more. We would love to be able to honor you and put a spotlight on you and show and let you show everybody how God has used you and give a little advice to those who are coming up in the footsteps just behind you. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day. We'll see you in a bit.